Good evening and welcome to another edition of Conservative Corner. We are a monthly talk show based here at the New TV Studios in Newton, Massachusetts. And we are, for want of a better term, the alternative media, in that in our state, in our Commonwealth, and in our nation in general, where the liberal media dominates, we are a conservative media show, which means we deal with issues that the mainstream media will not necessarily deal with. And we declare ourselves not to be, shall we say, nonpartisan, because we are conservative, which means we are Republican oriented. I am the Republican State Committee man for this district, which includes Newton, Brookline, and Wellesley. And I am also a vice chair of the Massachusetts Trump campaign. And I have served in that capacity since the beginning, and the last time in 2020 I was active. I had a role there, and in 2016, and this is our third time around, so to speak. You will notice that I'm wearing something different today. Well, I'm actually wearing my regular blue sport coat, but you will see it adorned with various pins. And what those are all the collectibles that I got as a part of the Massachusetts delegation to RNC Milwaukee last month. And they're adorned with various pins from various states that I traded with and collected from, and things of that nature. And so when you're at a convention, you tend to do these things. You trade pins with other delegations, and they in turn will give you theirs. I have some interesting ones, like from American Samoa and Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands. I have some of them. But nevertheless, at the convention, it was a wonderfully magnificent event. And this was coming, it really began a day after the Trump assassination attempt on a Sunday. And we went through the whole week there. And President Trump came on the last night to a crescendo of cheers, standing ovations galore. And he was wearing the patch over his ear because he was, after all, nearly assassinated. But it was a magnificent time, and I was very proud and glad to have been a part of it. This was my third time at such a convention, or should I say 2 out of 3 pertaining to President Trump, because in 2020 we did not have a convention because of the COVID shutdowns. Much has changed over the past year. In terms of politics, some have changed for the better, in that we see that our campaign to re-elect President Trump has gained momentum, and we are confident that we will bring him back to the White House where he belongs in November. But a lot has changed, not for the better, and a lot has changed, and particularly pertaining to the state of affairs vis-a-vis Israel and also the Jewish community in America. As I said and have been saying for a very long time, we in the Republican Party are the pro-Israel party. We have been for some time, and we will continue to do so. The Democrat Party is not the pro-Israel party. They are the opposite. They are the anti-Israel party. And as we speak now, they are currently having their anti-Israel Democrat convention in Chicago. And of course, tens of thousands of Antifa, anti-Israel, anti-American, nihilists, anarchists have shown up there to take over the convention, to do what they can to disrupt things there, to do what they can to really take the city of Chicago down with them. And what you are going to see unfolding there is riot after riot after riot. And I predicted this months ago that the Democrat convention now in Chicago will make the 1968 Democrat Convention in Chicago look like a rehearsal for choir boys. It's going to be a very bad event, and quite frankly, they're going to get what they deserve. But that being said, we are going to be addressing the issue of Israel and the Jewish community in America and how it pertains to the Trump campaign, and what will happen, or what we hope will happen, vis-a-vis the Jewish community shifting their votes away from the Democrats to the Republican Party in the forthcoming election. So, with that being said, we have with us a very important guest tonight, and her name is Esther Faust, and she is a new resident of Newton. And she hasn't been here that long. In fact, she was here only since last October. She has lived in Israel for much of her life. Her father, Richard Freeman, was and is a friend of mine who was also a part of the delegation in 2016. And Esther came to us from Israel, for want of a better term, because she is technically what one would term a war refugee. What happened with Esther was that she went to meet her father for his 75th birthday in Portugal when the war in Israel started, or should we say the pogrom, the onslaught from the Hamas terrorists on October 7th. She and her family were stranded there. It was very difficult to get back to Israel. Her father urged her to come to America, to the Boston area, and she came and moved to America, where she's been ever since. And also, Esther was a member of the Israeli Defense Forces, where she trained the infantry and I believe the tank corps as well. And she was in the military for 3 years, where I believe she was achieved the rank of lieutenant. We approached Esther some months ago because after meeting her, we realized that her heart was in the right place vis-a-vis Israel, and she was passionate about her support for Israel and for winning this election for her country, her adopted country of Israel. And so we asked her to be the chair of the Massachusetts Jewish Voices for Trump, a position which incidentally I held in 2020 and 2016, but I am now the chair of Coalitions for the Trump Campaign. So Esther, we're very glad to have you here with us tonight. And thank you for being here. Now, you have not been involved, or had not been involved in politics, unlike your father, until recently, when we approached you some months ago. And you have been basically just the average person in Israel and in America, just biding your time and working and raising your 3 children, and you're raising them in Newton, Massachusetts. And now suddenly something overcame you, which said that you had to get involved in this campaign, to re-elect, or rather elect, given that we do have a gap of 4 years, President Trump. What prompted you to do so?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Tom. So as Tom mentioned, we came here after October 7th in a very unplanned fashion. I'll talk a little bit about what happened to my family specifically, or loved ones that we had in Israel. Like many other Israelis during that terror massacre, my daughter lost a classmate and friend of hers. He was butchered in his home along with his entire family, his 2 older siblings and parents. I have a family member who is actually of Philippine origin, very clearly not Jewish. He was tortured and burnt alive by terrorists. My husband has a coworker that is still being held today as a hostage in Gaza. And the list goes on, as many Israelis and Americans know. So when we came here to Newton, we were hoping, to be able to decompress a little, recover from the PTSD that my family and many others have experienced. And what was very unfortunate was, the tsunami of anti-Semitism that we've seen skyrocket since October 7th. We've had an increase of around 400% in hate crimes against Jews. So, as I started making sense of this, because it's hitting us, whether it's through our K through 12 education, my alma mater, among others as well, we're just seeing these, hate crime after hate crime. Calls to murder Jews and to globalize the Intifada, being kind of, masqueraded as free speech, etc. So as I was making sense of this, I see on the one hand, there's a very strong correlation between certain states, if you will, where these things are happening, while others are not allowing this to happen. For example, if you look at Governor Abbott's executive order, or what DeSantis did there in Florida to protect the Jewish and American students that have a Title VI right to civil liberties within their educational institutions. So we're seeing that. On the other hand, we're seeing, certain cities where this rampant Jew hatred and assaults are being condoned and allowed as free speech. And then, as I'm kind of starting to figure out, is there a pattern here, is there not? the whole incident that we saw with the congressional hearings that Chairwoman Fox, Representative Stefanik held some of our country's universities accountable, including my own alma mater, MIT, where our nation was gaslit and told that calling for the genocide of Jews can depend on the context. And we're hearing such instances. And on the other side, we're seeing representatives such as Ilhan Omar, Bowman, etc., attending these encampments, speaking at these encampments, and they're making notorious and nefarious comments such as pro-genocidal Jews at these places. So it begs a question to make you scratch your head. Now, the journey for me, I'm an independent. As Tom said, I've never been involved in politics. But when one thing leads to another, and you start, opening your eyes and perhaps challenging some of the legacy thinking that has been so prevalent in our community, it's really hard if you don't make a conscientious effort to keep your blinders on. It's really hard not to notice and see who has our back at this time, the Jews as well as the American people, and who does not. And it's been very, very clear, unfortunately, because standing up for our civil liberties as Americans and as Jews should not be a partisan issue. But unfortunately, as of October 7th, we're seeing that it is.
One thing that I've been saying all along, but which has really come to fruition and has been proven, is that Donald Trump is the pro-Israel president. The Republican Party is the pro-Israel party. Now, when I was at the convention, we led chants on the floor of the convention. And one of the things that we did, and these were things which I acquired from the Florida delegation, and this says Donald Trump in Hebrew. And at the convention, you would have seen placards of this, especially when Jewish speakers were speaking. And such as this, that we brought back from the convention. One of the things that I'm most proud of is that at the convention was when there were parents there, American parents of a son who is being held captive by Hamas in Gaza. And when they were speaking, yours truly was shown on TV holding a sign that said, Donald Trump, the most pro-Israel president ever. And that was shown on C-SPAN, which means it was shown everywhere. And the issue wasn't so much that I was the one holding it, but that the message got out there. And the message is there and is certainly there that we are the pro-Israel party, and we are going to try our best to sway those American Jews who, for whatever odd reason, are still on the fence regarding the election. Now, Trump has said repeatedly that Jews would be crazy to vote for the Democrats and vote for Kamala Harris. And I concur with that. And what do you think of all the rhetoric that has been happening with Trump?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned something that is very accurate in terms of we have these legacy voting patterns, and it's really difficult, I think. Some of us have had true identity crises. As I mentioned, I'm an independent, so it's not that, a legacy party has betrayed me for years and years. But for example, my alma mater, it was I felt 1,000 knives in my back, as many of the other Jews have as well. But, a lot of this is looking at, Tom here mentioned what we're seeing, what we saw, if anyone watched the footage of the RNC, the signs that were held up, the prayers, the condemning of everything that has happened on October 7th, the promise to bring back the hostages and to protect our children and our students in their educational institutions versus some of the pictures that we've seen and are seeing today. But I think also a lot of it, people I think need to peel back the visuals, the facade of joy and whatnot, and take a clearer look at policies. And we've talked a lot about October 7th and what has happened since, but Donald Trump was our president from between 2016 and 2020. And I want to remind everyone, when you look long and hard at the policies that he instituted, his stance towards Iran and the strong sanctions that were taken against Iran. And when you look also at his declaration of Golan as the Golan Heights as a sovereign Israel land, and him signing the executive order protecting Jews by turning them into nationality and allowing us to fight that from a civil rights standpoint. So when you look at this, Donald Trump has a long history of pro-Israel, pro-Jewish policy. So this isn't something that just happened in October 7th that we're seeing. But I think the real challenge that we're seeing, this is truly an identity crisis. But at the same time, many folks still, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to see. It's almost like Stockholm syndrome when you see that, who you thought were your allies or your friends, aren't there for us when we need them now. But we are seeing Jews starting to come around. If legacy voting has been, typically in the U.S., Jewish voters have typically voted 75, 80% Democrat, we're starting to see polls where it's starting to bypass the 50%. So a lot of Jews are starting to see that. And it's not every election cycle that you see a demographic that has a very, very high turnover rate starting to see the light and make such large swings.
American Jews have, for decades, voted reflexively for the Democrat Party. We've campaigned against them doing that. And typically, 1/3 of the Jews will always vote Republican. They are the Orthodox Jews, Russian Jews, and small c conservative Jews. What we're seeing, to your point, is that we hope to get over 50% of American Jews voting for the Republicans. Now, that really should be 90% because how any American Jew can vote for the Democrat Party at this time is beyond me. I cannot fathom that they can in good conscience do that. And they have actually, and we have enough evidence, enough anecdotes to indicate that the Democrat Party has become viciously anti-Israel. And after their convention, you will see that this has been demonstrated. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. Our congressman, for example, Jake Auchincloss, I will give him credit. He is pro-Israel, but he's the exception to the rule. And of course, there are local politicians in the state and elsewhere that are as well. But when you have someone like Chuck Schumer very dastardly coming out against the policies of Israel in defending itself in Gaza, then you know that something has really gone awry with the Democrat Party. And that is what we are trying to preach as best as possible to American Jewry. But we hope and anticipate that a people so educated and with multiple degrees and who are generally in white-collar jobs, i.e. the American Jewish electorate, that they will see the reality for what it is and realize that even if they don't like Donald Trump personally, or if they have issues with him, they have to at least see that he is the best possible candidate for Israel moving into the future. Now, what we have seen after he left office, Iran has really become a power again. By the time he left office, Iran was, in boxing terms, on the ropes. They were isolated. The government was about to fall. Had he been reelected in 2020, you would probably have seen a secular, non-religious, non-fanatical government in Iran, in which case you wouldn't see the export of terrorism, especially with what happened and is happening in Gaza. I am convinced, as I'm sure you are, and many people watching are, that if Trump had been elected in 2020, that Iran would not have been exporting terrorism in the way that it has and would not have been funding Hamas, and Hamas would not have in turn attacked Israel. But the reality is, it's not too late to stop Iran. But that only will happen if Trump is elected president, because Trump will continue the policy of isolating Iran to the point where their government is overthrown and they will stop exporting terrorism, which they have been doing since 1979 when the Democrat president, Jimmy Carter, allowed them to oust the Shah and take over the government. And Iran is not only a threat to Israel, but really to the Western Hemisphere, and especially to the United States. How many times do the Iranian leadership have to say death to America when America will wake up and realize that what they say, they mean? Should they acquire intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons, which they are presumably close to doing, Israel will be first and America will be second. Yes, they're a rogue state. They can be eliminated by the United States within an hour or so. But still, they can kill a lot of people. In the process, I read a news item once that said that Iran is willing to completely destroy Israel, even though they themselves will lose half of their population, which is about 30 to 40 million people. They don't care so long as they defeat the Jewish state. And then after that, they will attack the United States and the assorted Western allies.
Yeah. And I think, things are moving very quickly. And with the new nomination of Tim Walz as the vice president, I think people should be especially concerned, because what Tom here mentioned is not just speculation. I mean, it's pretty much been so much as voiced as the intent. And we know, the choice of Tim Walz over Josh Shapiro, who is a wildly popular leader within Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania has over 430,000 Jews there. So I think the choice was very, very telling. And Tim Walz has already told us, and he's still telling us after the nomination exactly where his heart is, whether it's through congratulating Ilhan Omar or his very, very close ties that he's had with several of the leaders within his community that have been very vocal supporters of October 7th and Adolf Hitler. He has invited a radical imam to come speak 5 times and contributed $100K to him. And then, when this came out after his nomination, it was, of course, denied. But there's footage where he calls this radical individual a master teacher. So we need, when someone tells you who they are, we need to listen. And I think that we should be especially concerned with some of the administration and strategic choices that our presidential nominee has decided to surround herself with.
Indeed. And, the advisors that these people will have, Kamala Harris and also her vice presidential nominee, they're much to be desired. They're really in the anti-Israel fold. So let's say people will say, oh, Kamala isn't that bad. Kamala really has Israel in her heart. But okay, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe. But if you look at the advisors that they will bring in, that's cause for alarm, and especially for Tim Walz and the radical leftists that they will bring in, who are naturally anti-Israel. The leftists are naturally anti-Israel. People have to understand that that's where the left goes. The real anti-Semitism in America, it's not the dozen or more neo-Nazis that show up in a goofy way to rallies in Ohio or Nebraska. It is the tens of thousands of pro-Hamas, anti-Israel radicals that you see both homegrown in America and from abroad that are disrupting not only our universities, but our society at large. And it's gone beyond really the Jewish community and also Israel, in the sense that you will see the pro-Hamas people disrupting events like Christmas celebrations in New York City, the Macy's Day Parade, storming into churches. And they're doing things that are just so vile, it's almost as if they're urging America to despise them. And the average American does despise them because they see them for what they are. They're a vicious, hateful group which is bent on subversing American and Israeli society and Western society in general.
Yeah, and I think the recent congressional address that Israel gave, I think, is a really good example. I mean, set aside the fact that about half of the Democrats boycotted that event. What went on in Washington outside the speech was absolutely horrific and horrendous. And this isn't just about the Jews, as you said. This is America. Abolish the U.S. Hamas is coming. This was, sprayed all over the Liberty Bell and other monuments. And I think this is an issue. This isn't just about the Jews or about Israel policy. When we see these encampments and what's going on in these universities, and Kamala herself has already said, she just said a couple weeks ago, she says that she promises not to silence and stifle these protests. So basically what we have is a condonement of the violation of American students' civil liberties on campus, where they're being physically assaulted and their movement is being restricted and they're unable to go to their classes and they're being threatened. So the issue we have here is it's yes, Iran and Israel. We talked about that, but it goes far beyond that, and it's a major threat to all of us that have kids that attend any form of educational institution or walk within, common spaces downtown. So I think we should all be concerned.
It's interesting, the sincerity of Donald Trump vis-a-vis Israel is really apparent in that just recently he set up Jewish Voices for Trump, and this is an advocacy group for the campaign, but also to demonstrate that the Republican Party under Donald Trump really cares for Israel and will support the Jewish people in their fight against anti-Semitism in America. But I will add that although this group was set up recently, we were among the first to reinstitute it here in New England. And you're doing a good job at reinvigorating it. And recently you had an event which, in the pouring rain, despite that event, it was you had over 100 people there indoors at our producer Sandy Young's house, for which we're grateful to her. And the outpouring of support for Israel among the Israeli and Jewish community is becoming much more apparent. In our closing minutes, and I always say this is the fastest 30 minutes in talk radio, in talk TV, what would you say to American Jews, as someone who's lived in Israel, as someone who was basically had to flee Israel to come to America for this election in November?
Yeah. So I think this is very important for all of us at this time to, really look beyond substance. This is a time, there's a lot at stake. We talked about, Western American and Jewish values in Israel, but a lot here is at stake. I urge everyone to look beyond substance and, joyful parades, etc., and look long and hard at policies. Look at them and arrive at whatever critical conclusion you have, but I beg you to look at policies. And, some of us might say, well, okay, it doesn't really matter, whatever it is. We're a small group. We're a relatively small percentage within the U.S. But when you look at, we have a very high potential, a lot of numbers in certain states, and here, and every vote matters. So look at the substance and go out and vote. And I think that this is one of the most key times in our history. I mean, as Tom mentioned, I'm not in politics. This is all a new area and domain for me, but I feel that this is one of the most important times that we have in history, and we all need to do what we can to keep ourselves
safe.
And
I would remind people also that September 11th will be coming up soon, and we in Newton in particular have a very large ceremony and memorial that is very well attended, and especially given what's been happening around the world vis-a-vis the Jewish community and in Israel, September 11th will certainly be more than relevant this year. So we'd urge you all to attend that ceremony and in the surrounding communities as well. And of course, October 7th will follow shortly thereafter with the commemoration of the hostages, of the, shall we say, the pogroms in Israel and the hostages, especially the Americans, who are still there. So again, the election will be upon us soon. Early voting will start in early September, so please go out, vote your conscience, which means vote for Donald Trump to save our nation and, quite frankly, to save Israel in the coming election. We need this to happen.